Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hi dear students, my name is Amit Ajmani and we'll be studying about laws of motion now. Now initially Galileo, we must be aware of his name, a scientist called Galileo, right? He deduced that whenever a body is in motion, then it tends to be in motion uniformly without any external force acting on it. Now he performed a simple experiment. What he did was he basically took a sliding surface like this, right, and he just allowed a ball to slide from this inclined plane. Got it? Now what he said was that if we allow this particular ball to go through this inclined surface, then in that case this particular ball is going to go down, and from here now this ball will go up and it is going to achieve the same height, right? If I just change the inclined surface like this, then also when the ball will go down from here, it will travel the whole distance and now it will travel some more distance to achieve the same height. Similarly, more inclined surface, the ball is going to travel some more distance, but it reaches and attains the same height. Now, if very importantly, I allow this ball to go down and now I allow it to go on the straight surface, then in that case this ball is going to go like this and it will continue going till it reaches that particular height. Now theoretically it was quite fine to understand, to relate, but practically we see that this does not happen. Why this does not happen? Because importantly the frictional force once again comes into play. When this ball is sliding over this particular surface, the opposing frictional force will slow it down and after some time it will stop it. So we can try to reduce this frictional force by taking very plain or smooth surfaces or glass surfaces, or just by putting some lubricant on the surfaces, by which this frictional force is going to reduce quite a lot, but still it will never be zero, right? Now based on this observation, Newton performed his various experiments and he gave his laws of motion. He gave 3 laws of motion. We'll be studying about all the 3 laws of motion one by one. First of all, we'll be reading about Newton's first law of motion. Newton's first law of motion. Now, before starting this Newton's first law of motion, I would like to relate a particular term that is known as inertia. Now, what is inertia? If we define inertia, then it is defined as the tendency of an undisturbed object to remain in its present state and position. Now, let us explain and let us try to understand what exactly inertia means. Inertia means that every body has a tendency to remain in that particular state in which it was initially, right, unless and until it is disturbed by some external force, right. For example, if we keep a particular glass on a table or anything on a table, and if we don't just take it out, then in that case it is going to remain on that table forever. That glass is not going to come from that table and just go into the kitchen by its own. Similarly, if I see any particular thing, if it is in motion, it will tend to remain in motion only. Fine. But why is it so that it doesn't remain in motion? That we have studied just previous topic, that because of frictional force. So inertia is the tendency of an undisturbed object to be at a state of rest or to keep moving with the same velocity with which it was initially moving. Now, based on this inertia, Newton gave his first law of motion. Now, what exactly Newton's first law of motion states? It states that an object, any particular object, it remains in a state of rest or in a state of uniform motion. It will remain in the state of rest or in uniform motion in a straight line, of course, if it is moving, right, unless until it is compelled to change its state by some applied force, by some external force. Fine. So, if a body is in a state of rest, it will remain in that state of rest until unless somebody applies some external force and moves it. Similarly, if a body is in a state of motion, it is always going to be in that state of motion unless until some external force is applied on it. This is Newton's first law of motion. Now, based on Newton's first law of motion, we have seen that this Newton's law of motion is based on inertia, right? So, this law of motion is also known as law of inertia. Now, there are many observations based on this Newton's first law that we encounter, we see, we experience in our daily life.